After dying in a fire, Kalen opened his eyes to find himself at his wedding along with his wife and child. This time, his wife, Lyra, chose her childhood sweetheart, Zayn, who had just returned from overseas, choosing to marry him. She was utterly disgusted with Kalen, kicking him out of the company and letting her sweetheart take over. I won't marry a loser. Besides, he's just a dog of my Chin family. As a result, after her sweetheart took over Bashan company, the company suffered consecutive failed bids and even became embroiled in a murder scandal. His wife came begging to him again, but only to ask him to take the blame for her sweetheart. Seeing his reluctance, she tried to use the debt of gratitude Kalen owed her family against him. Kalen laughed maniacally, looking at his wife, who had been reborn along with him. I paid off the Chun family's debt in my last life. Now it's you who owe me. Search. Keep searching. If you can't find Lyra today, I'll skin you alive. Kalen opened his eyes to see the furious face of Chen's father. The stab wounds on his body still ached faintly, but when he looked down, he found no wounds on his body. It was as if being stabbed to death by the victim's family at the entrance of Bashan company was just an illusion. Seeing his bewildered expression, Chen's father became even angrier and grabbed the cane beside him, about to smash it down on him. Bang! The cane hit the wall behind him, fully bringing Kalen back to his senses. He looked around and was certain that he had returned to the wedding scene. Chen's father was still pointing at him and cursing, and the words of the surrounding guests enveloped him. I knew an adopted son was unreliable. He doesn't even know to go look for his wife when she runs away. Adopted son. Look at his cowardly appearance. To put it bluntly, he's just a Livian son-in-law. Lyra had disappeared. Kalen's brows furrowed and his heart was in turmoil. In the previous life, Lyra and Kalen had successfully completed the wedding. It was on the wedding night that she gave herself to Zayn. Kalen caught them in the act, but she used the debt of gratitude to threaten him into silence. Now she suddenly disappeared, unless she was reborn like him. But before Kalen was stabbed to death, Lyra had already taken all the liquid assets and eloped with Zayn. Could it be that they also had an accident? The pain of betrayal followed him like a shadow. Kalen took a few deep breaths before he could barely maintain his composure. The one thing he was sure of was that their elopement cut off his only chance of survival. Before he could sort things out, he heard a familiar voice. Kalen looked up and saw the missing Lyra, who was walking towards him with Zayn on her arm. Her neck was covered in hickeys and her red lips were still glistening with moisture. I won't marry a loser. Besides, he's just a dog of my Chin family. In front of everyone, Lyra put the wedding ring on Zayn's finger, announcing that he was her new groom. Kalen sneered inwardly. Her actions confirmed that only Lyra had been reborn. If Zayn had been reborn, he wouldn't have touched the mess that was Bashan company with a 10-foot pole. Her eyes were full of disdain, and when she walked up to Kalen, her disgust reached its peak. After today, you will resign voluntarily and hand over all your duties to Zayn. Zayn had a mocking smile on his lips as he said to Kalen, "Don't take it too hard. Lyra just trusts me." Kalen didn't care about their mockery. His gaze passed through them to the small figure behind them. That was Lyra's child, Liam, who had died in the pool of blood with him in the last life. Liam looked at Kalen with hatred, his eyes showing a maturity beyond his years. He took the initiative to hold Zayn's hand. Uncle Zayn is a PhD who studied abroad, while Kalen is just an undergraduate. It's only natural that Mom trusts Uncle Zayn. As soon as he finished speaking, Kalen was certain that Liam had also been reborn. His words were like the final blow that broke his spine, making him completely give up on this child that he had held in the palm of his hand in the previous life. Kalen was stabbed to death while trying to protect Liam, who was still at Bashan company, yet he still hated him. On his deathbed, Liam whispered in his ear, "If my real dad were here, he would have been able to protect me." Thinking of this, Kalen couldn't suppress the sneer in his throat. He spread his hands and replied, "It's only right that you change your marriage partner. After all, a child should be with his biological father. But remember this time it's me who's breaking off the engagement. I think you're dirty." This sentence was like a thunderclap, causing an uproar in the hall. Lyra's eyes were bloodshot. If not for someone holding her back, she would have skinned Kalen alive. "You're just a stray dog begging for scraps at my Chin family, and you dare to say I'm dirty? You're not worthy." The way she looked at Kaylin was no different from how she would look at a dog that she could order around at will. After calming down a little, Lyra looked at Kaylin coldly. No matter who Liam's father is, Liam is my child, a child of the Chin family. Kaylin pursed his lips, a lingering bitterness in his mouth. Calculating Liam's age, Kaylin could pinpoint exactly when Lyra had become pregnant with him. This time was their makeup wedding, but Lyra and Kaylin had already registered their marriage 5 years ago. That night, Lyra and Kaylin had invited their respective friends for a gathering. Halfway through the party, Kaylin discovered the two of them entangled in the bedroom, and he stood at the door, hearing everything clearly. He couldn't bring himself to enter, nor could he leave, afraid that people would find out that his wife had cheated on him right after their wedding. Only after the sounds inside subsided did Kaylin push open the door. He still remembered Zayn's humiliating words as he rested his head on Lyra's shoulder. "Isn't this your husband?" Lyra was wrapped in a blanket, revealing a large amount of her skin, and she didn't even spare Kaylin a glance, directly ordering, "My clothes are all torn. Go buy me a new set." Kaylin can't remember how he bought the clothes and delivered them, only that his body and soul felt separated, obliterating all his emotions. I had already repaid the Chen family's kindness with one life, and in this life, I will only live for myself. With the backing of the Chun family's eldest daughter, Zayn embraced Lyra and chimed in. "Since we've come to this, you should just initiate the divorce and leave with nothing." The two of them echoed each other, clearly intending to kick Kaylin out of Bashan Company without any cost. The anger within Kaylin was like a volcano ready to erupt, but his expression remained calm. "Leave with nothing? I can certainly leave Bashan Company, but I will take what belongs to me. Haven't you always wanted to control Bashan Company? I can sell you my shares." Hearing that Kaylin was willing to sell his shares, Lyra's eyes lit up. They originally wanted Kaylin to leave Bashan Company, and getting his shares was an unexpected bonus. After all, as long as she could fully control Bashan Company, she could use her memories from her previous life to develop it further. Kaylin can't read minds, but he could tell from her expression. He sneered inwardly, mocking Lyra's miscalculation. In her previous life, she attributed Bashan Company's bankruptcy to his decision-making errors, multiple failed bids, and even the purchase of substandard building materials, which led to the building's collapse, ruining years of hard work. But she never realized that the real tumor was standing right beside her. As soon as Zayn enters Bashan Company, its stock price will plummet to rock bottom, eventually becoming worthless. His early sale is to secure enough cash. Zayn seemed very excited, and after whispering with Lyra for a moment, they finally made up their minds. "Of course, but you can only get half the normal stock price." Even Chin's father frowned at this. Kaylin walked up to Lyra, pulled her aside, and whispered in her ear, "You know very well how many dirty things have happened in Bashan Company over the years. If you don't want to burn bridges, don't haggle with me here." Lyra's eyes were full of suspicion, probably suspecting that Kaylin had also been reborn, but no matter how she looked, she couldn't find anything unusual, and she snorted, agreeing to his conditions. "Take the money and get lost. Don't let me see you again. Bashan Company has been stagnant under your control for so many years. When Zayn takes over, he will definitely make Bashan a leader in the industry." No matter what, Lyra always had unrealistic confidence and trust in Zayn, but she had no trust at all in Kaylin, her childhood sweetheart. She seemed to have forgotten that Kaylin had also been admitted to graduate school, but he gave up his studies because Bashan was on the verge of bankruptcy. Kaylin's chest felt like it was being pressed by a huge stone, and the frustration was almost unbearable. He stared at Lyra, trying to find a trace of the past in her face. It was his tireless effort day and night, socializing until he had multiple stomach bleeds, and he was hospitalized several times. Only then did he pull Bashan Company back from the brink of bankruptcy, but Lyra could negate all his efforts with a few casual words. Kaylin finally understood. It wasn't that Lyra couldn't love, it was just that she had never loved him. They signed a contract on the spot, and as Kaylin left, Liam stood there spitting at him. Useless waste. Kaylin is a useless waste. In his previous life, his years of education had no effect on Liam, and he only called Kaylin Chunyin. Now it seems that it was genetic. He carried that disgusting blood. Kaylin never would have imagined. His last visit to Bashan was with his divorce papers. Lyra and Zayn were not at the company. They had gone abroad for their honeymoon after that day. However, they were indeed not in the company, but Kaylin could hear their names mentioned by the employees all the way. Where did this new vice president come from? Why did he change our working hours as soon as he arrived? I don't know about anything else, but he definitely doesn't understand the business at all. He's just trying to squeeze the ordinary employees. Along the way, all Kaylin could hear were employees complaining about these bizarre rules. He placed the divorce agreement on Lyra's desk, and as he was leaving, he saw Ken waiting for him at the door. Ken was Kaylin's assistant and also his most trusted confidant in this company. In his previous life, Ken disappeared mysteriously. It wasn't until the collapse of a building that the company was contracted to build that Kaylin discovered his body. At that time, the company was exposed for using substandard construction materials, and after a report by an internet celebrity, it quickly fermented. Kaylin was pushed out as a scapegoat, bearing the infamy, unable to investigate the cause of Ken's death. But now, Kaylin, look at this. Ken handed him his phone, showing his chat history with Zayn. After Kaylin left, Ken was responsible for taking over his work. The chat interface was densely packed with work messages sent by Ken, but Zayn hadn't replied to a single one. She doesn't reply to my messages, but she still posts on her moments about her travels. Kaylin, are you really at ease handing over the company to them? Bashan is your life's work. Faced with Ken's question, Kaylin shrugged and said helplessly, I have no choice. I've sold all my shares, and Bashan has nothing to do with me anymore. Ken had a mischievous smile on his face and whispered, Others may not know you, but I do. You must have already found a new place. Kaylin smiled mysteriously and didn't directly answer Ken's question. Things are accomplished through secrecy. Longshan residential area is the largest residential area that can be contracted in recent years, with a total of 7 phases. Bashan couldn't handle it alone and had to split the profits with Chinjin, each taking on a portion. When Chen's father established Bashan, he was already a sworn enemy of Chinjin, and Kaylin used Longshan residential area as his stepping stone to enter Chinjin. Kaylin promised to make Bashan give up the contracting rights for Longshan residential area within 3 months. It was now summer, and when Kaylin entered the construction site dormitory, his clothes were soaked with sweat. During these 3 months, Kaylin would occasionally visit the area contracted by Bashan because he really couldn't remember when that worker had the accident back then. A worker accidentally fell into the cement and died. In order to avoid compensation, Zayn forcefully suppressed the incident. When the truth came to light, he directly shifted the blame to Kaylin, and Kaylin was forced to hold a press conference to apologize. Kaylin remembered that this worker had a daughter who worked tirelessly to find out the truth about her father's death. She gradually became an internet celebrity and found the truth with the help of the public. Kaylin's frequent inspections were not only to prevent the worker's death, but also to use the power of the worker's daughter to completely crush Lyra and Zayn. However, Kaylin didn't know the exact time of the worker's death. Kaylin, what are you doing here? Once again, Kaylin found nothing. Just as he was about to go back, he heard someone calling his name from above. He looked up and saw Liam standing on tiptoes on the steel bars. It had only been a week since he last saw him. His clothes were tattered, his face was covered in dirt, and he looked like an orphan. Kaylin guessed that Lyra had taken Zayn abroad and couldn't be bothered to take care of Liam. Why are you here? Why aren't you in school? Liam pouted and looked at Kaylin disdainfully. I am the future heir of Bashan. Why should I go to school and stay with those poor people? I knew it. I'm not your child. Have you ever smelled yourself? You reek of poverty. He pretended to gag. Kaylin was a bit stunned, unable to imagine how Lyra usually educated Liam to have such a personality. He shook his head and didn't intend to say anything more to him. Kaylin, don't go. Stay and play with me. Still in a commanding tone. Kaylin was about to leave, and Liam roared at him. You are a servant of the Chin family. How dare you disobey me? He was furious, jumping up and down on the steel bars, completely unaware of the danger. Mom was right. You don't know how to be grateful, you bastard without parents. Before the word bastard faded away, Kaylin turned around and saw Liam slip and fall, but a steel bar pierced his chest and blood gushed out. Liam reached out to Kaylin, his eyes filled with terror, and he pleaded, Dad, Dad, save me. This was the first time he called Kaylin Dad, but it was too late. Kaylin didn't stop. He just called for an ambulance and watched as Liam was taken away. This was the last bit of kindness he would show him. As he was being carried onto the stretcher, Liam stared at Kaylin, murmuring, "Why? Why didn't you save me? You used to warn me about dangers. Why not this time?" For the first time, Kaylin saw panic in Liam's eyes. He begged Kaylin to go with him to the hospital. Kaylin slowly pulled his hand off of his and grinned. "I'm not your dad. Go find your real dad." That night, Kaylin felt uneasy. He was woken up by the sound of crying outside the dorm. After getting dressed, he grabbed a flashlight and walked out. Not far away, near the cement truck, Kaylin saw a girl crying. She wasn't very old, probably a freshman in college. Kaylin's heart skipped a beat, and he rushed over. When he saw her face, he stopped breathing for a moment. It was Suri. 1,000 thoughts flooded his mind. Could it be that her father had already had an accident? Kaylin handed her a pack of tissues. When Suri saw him, she was shocked, but her expression quickly turned to disgust. "You want me to shut up? I'm telling you, it's not going to happen." She stared at Kaylin stubbornly, her eyes filled with hatred. "I know who you are, but I will make the person who killed my father pay." Kaylin looked at her, and for a moment, she overlapped with the woman who delivered the fatal blow to Bashan in his previous life. The current Suri was still a bit naive, but with a little training, she could become a pawn in his hands. "I'm not here to stop you. Do you want to make the person who killed your father pay?" Suri hesitated for a moment, then nodded firmly. Kaylin laid out the whole plan, called Ken, and asked him to cooperate with him, working from the inside and outside. In less than a week, the cement murder case at the construction site was trending on the internet. In the video, Suri tearfully accused Bashan Company of an action, saying that her father's death was a complete murder. Not long after Suri's father's death, his body was found in the unfinished building. With both witness and physical evidence, Bashan began its first collapse. The day after the incident fermented, the door to Kaylin's dorm room was being pounded on. As soon as Kaylin opened it, he was slapped by an enraged Lyra. Before Kaylin could recover, she pointed at him and yelled, "Kaylin, what are you doing? Do you have to destroy Zayn to be satisfied? It's just a death. What construction site doesn't have deaths? Do you have to make trouble?" Lyra was furious and slapped Kaylin again. The taste of blood filled his mouth, and he lowered his eyes. Isn't Zayn reaping what he sowed? He insisted on covering this up. Could it really be covered up? How did that worker really die? Don't you know better than I do? Kaylin's words further enraged Lyra. She knew Kaylin was the one pulling the strings, but she only thought he was jealous of Zayn. She was convinced that if it could be covered up in the previous life, it could be covered up in this life as well. In the previous life, she pushed Kaylin out to quell the public outcry. Kaylin was forced to kneel at the company entrance for 3 days and 3 nights, suffering the scorn of thousands. Lyra forcefully suppressed her anger and reached out to touch the red handprint on Kaylin's face, but he dodged her. She gritted her teeth and said softly, "Just consider it repaying the Chun family's kindness. Help me take the blame for Zayn. I guarantee you can come back as CEO after you get out. I've made arrangements. You won't suffer in prison." Without waiting for Kaylin's agreement, Lyra grabbed him, trying to drag him out of the dorm. Kaylin stood his ground, his heart completely frozen. He stared at the anxious Lyra and said in a low voice, "I repaid the Chun family's kindness in my last life. Now it's you who owe me." Lyra seemed to be choked by fate, but in a moment, she lunged at Kaylin, her expression ferocious. "You did it on purpose. You did this on purpose. You harmed me in the last life, and now you want to harm me again." Even now, she still firmly believed that Kaylin was the one who switched the building materials to inferior ones, that he was the one who harmed her. "Liam's serious injury. You did that on purpose too, right? If something happens to Zayn, I'll make you pay with your life." Lyra, as she always did, had no qualms about pushing all the blame onto Kaylin. He took a few steps back, revealing Suri, who had been hiding behind him. She was holding a selfie stick, and the phone on it was recording. "Everyone look. This is a murderer." Lyra stood there, her face dark. Due to the phone recording, all she could do was glare at Kaylin before turning to leave. Bashan will withdraw from the Longshan Community Project and will provide sufficient compensation to the victims. This incident is entirely due to the general manager's failure to supervise. We have already appealed, and we will give everyone a satisfactory result. The television in the room played the report. Lyra was serious, and with a few words, she defined the nature of the matter. She couldn't bear to see her beloved suffer even a little, and the general manager became their scapegoat. The abandoned general manager stood beside Kalen. The documents he brought were on the table, a thick stack. President Chun, you said you would give me $1 million. Is that true? Kalen didn't answer, but first flipped through the documents in front of him, which were about Bashan's bid for a certain commercial construction project. It was this bid that led to Ken's death. The profit from this commercial construction was over half, but it was still not enough to pay off Zayn's gambling debts. To gain more profit, he took the risk of using substandard building materials, causing the building to collapse, resulting in numerous deaths and injuries. Ken discovered that he was using substandard building materials and was forcibly drowned in cement. After the building collapsed, Ken's body was finally revealed. Ken's death was still vivid in Kalen's mind, and he couldn't help but shiver. Turning his gaze to the general manager, Kalen said, I can give you the money, of course, but you have to do me another favor. Kalen's eyes were bright as he instructed the general manager to tell Lyra that he was determined to win this bid, and let him set a trap for him, making Zayn owe more gambling debts. Those gambling debts would drive Zayn to a dead end, forcing him to follow the same path as in his previous life. After the general manager left, Suri, who was standing by, frowned and asked Kalen, Are you really going to compete with him for this bid? Although you've been promoted, you don't have that much power, do you? After Bashan withdrew, Kalen successfully entered Chinjin and obtained a relatively high position. Facing Suri's question, Kalen chuckled and replied, Zayn won't give up this bid. Now that Bashan was going downhill, if she wanted to turn the tide, Lyra certainly wouldn't miss this bid. She was reborn with me, so she naturally knew how profitable it was. In the bidding conference room, when Kalen entered the conference room, Zayn and Lyra had already submitted their bids. Zayn had a confident smile on his face, while Lyra gave Kalen a cold glance. As soon as Kalen submitted his bid, he received a message from Lyra on his phone. Let me tell you, Bashan is determined to win this bid. So what if you're reborn? Without Bashan, you're just a loser. Lyra was sure Kalen would compete with her, unaware that the price of his bid was even lower than Bashan's in the previous life. After the bidding ended, Kalen noticed that the smile on Zayn's face disappeared. When Kalen came out of the restroom, he happened to see him making a phone call at the door. Just give me a little more time. I'll have the money to pay you back soon. My wife is the president of Bashan. I can run, but can Bashan run? The person on the other end of the phone seemed to have relented, and Zayn hung up the phone with a dark expression. He looked up and saw Kalen standing in front of him, becoming even more annoyed. Zayn deliberately bumped into Kalen's shoulder and said hatefully in his ear, Do you think I'll let the matter of my son go just like that? Just you wait. I'll collect what you owe me for Liam and Longshan with interest. Kalen shrugged, finding Zayn's threat to him exceptionally hollow. Buzz, buzz. Kalen looked at his phone. It was a message from Suri. Ken followed those people to the construction market. Do you want to come too? So fast. The bidding results would come out in about 3 days, and Zayn had already started sending people to find suitable substandard building materials. It seemed that the matter Kalen had instructed the former general manager to do was done well. Zayn was already a heavy gambler, and in the previous life, the company's bankruptcy was inextricably linked to his gambling addiction. Before, Bashan had Kalen to barely keep it going, delaying the bankruptcy. Now, Lyra thought she could handle it, and Zayn, with even more gambling debts, was becoming increasingly anxious. This wasn't as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Kalen looked at the address Suri sent on his phone, a cold smile playing on his lips. The day they would be punished was not far off. Bashan Company won the bid for the commercial construction as expected. After a while, Kalen finally went to the hospital to see Liam after he pleaded with him many times. The hospital was filled with the smell of disinfectant. Liam looked pale, but the wounds on his body had healed a lot. Liam looked at Kalen eagerly, his eyes filled with a dependence Kalen had never seen before. Dad, Dad, you finally came to see me. Even though Kalen heard Liam calling him Dad, he remained unmoved. As far as Kalen knew, during Liam's hospitalization, Lyra and Zayn never visited him once. Just like in a previous life, when they eloped, they didn't take Liam with them, and the only one who chose to protect him, Kalen, was deemed by Liam as unworthy of being his father. During his time in the hospital, Liam would occasionally share his life there with Kaylin. Sometimes he would also wonder why Kaylin didn't love him as much as he did in the previous life. After a while, Liam came to his own conclusion. Liam held Kaylin's hand, tears streaming down his face. Dad, it was all Liam's fault. Before, Liam really knows he was wrong. Now please forgive me. Just then, the ward door was kicked open with a bang. Zayn burst in, furious. Seeing Liam and Kaylin holding hands, his anger turned into a mocking laugh. Kaylin, Ken is your man. Shouldn't you give me an explanation? I know you're jealous of me, but Bashan just landed this huge deal. Are you really determined to destroy it? He roared the last sentence. Lyra followed him, her brows furrowed in anger. I knew it. You're still scheming to use those substandard construction materials. An orphan is an orphan. A bastard with no parents will always go astray. Ken was tied up by the people behind him and thrown into the ward. There was still wet cement on him. His mouth was sealed with tape. Kaylin was about to untie him when he was blocked by the bodyguards. Zayn wore a smug smile, as if he thought he had Kaylin cornered. The police will be here soon. You'd better think about how you're going to explain this to them. Using substandard construction materials is not a trivial matter. You might end up in jail for a few years. Kaylin wasn't as flustered as they expected. Instead, he stood there with his arms crossed, looking composed. Lyra, heaven must be blind to give you a second chance. Do you really think that I, a person who was kicked out of Bashan, could pull off such a scheme with just a few trusted subordinates left in Bashan? Zayn's eyes flashed with panic, but only for a moment. He took out photos from his pocket and scattered them in front of Kaylin. There were pictures of the general manager meeting Kaylin and a large bank transfer. What if I add the general manager to the equation? Is that enough? I think the worker's death earlier was also arranged by you. Lyra didn't expect Kaylin to have private contact with the general manager. Now she completely believed Zayn's words. She was furious, as if Kaylin was the one who ruined Bashan. Kaylin, I can let go of the worker's accidental death. I can even pretend that you spread rumors about Bashan with Suri because you were angry. But why did you insist on using substandard construction materials again and again? How did our Chen family ever wrong you? Kaylin shook his head and denied it. I said it wasn't me. You're still lying at a time like this. While they were in a standoff, the police pushed open the ward door. Officer, it's him. He's the one using substandard construction materials. Lyra, as if seeing her savior, tried to lead the police to arrest Kaylin. The police, however, seemed to ignore her and instead handcuffed Zayn. You are suspected of using substandard construction materials. Come with us. Suri followed the police. She had been authorized and was now broadcasting live. Zayn had used substandard construction materials, acting recklessly. Now the higher-ups wanted to make an example out of someone, and Zayn became the scapegoat. As soon as Zayn was handcuffed, his arrogance vanished. He almost collapsed to the ground, muttering, I can't go in. I can't go in. They won't let me go. He looked around and finally placed his hope on Lyra. He almost begged on his knees. Lyra, save me. Save me. He pointed at Liam, who was still in the hospital bed, and sobbed. We have a child. If I go in, our child will be fatherless. Lyra was moved. She stood in front of the police, urgently saying, You really have the wrong person. Zayn is a businessman who just returned from abroad. How could he do something that would ruin his own future? The two officers holding Zayn looked at each other. One of them, who seemed younger, said, We have collected sufficient evidence, and this Mr. Zayn has no record of going abroad in recent years. After his words fell, the entire ward fell into silence. Lyra couldn't believe what she heard. She staggered back, staring blankly at Zayn. Zayn lowered his head, not daring to meet Lyra's gaze. Suri wore a gleeful smile. Her father's death was inextricably linked to Zayn. Now seeing Zayn brought to justice felt like a huge release of pent-up anger. Kaylin helped Ken up, ripped the tape off his mouth, and patted down his clothes. Ken took a few deep breaths and finally calmed down. That bastard. He almost buried me in cement too. Luckily, Suri arrived just in time. She was live streaming, and Zayn was wary of the exposure, so he just tied me up. He took out a USB drive from his pocket containing records of Zayn's purchases of substandard construction materials. By this time, Bashan's commercial construction had reached a point of no return. Even though Zayn knew he would be discovered, he still held onto a sliver of hope. He chose the same method as in the previous life, believing that as long as he eliminated all the witnesses, he could get away with it. Kalen glanced at Zayn, who sat dumbfounded on the floor, a cold smile playing on his lips. Zayn, do you have anything to say for yourself now? Suri's phone was still live streaming, but Zayn, having nothing left to lose, became utterly vicious. Kalen, what are you so proud of? You raised my child for so many years, painstakingly pulled Bashan back from the brink of bankruptcy, and in the end, it'll still be mine. Liam, lying in the hospital bed, struggled to sit up, wanting to refute Zayn. No, no. Kalen squatted down before him, looked him straight in the eye, and said word by word, yours? Do you really think you'll ever get out? After taking over Bashan, how many people have you buried? How many souls do you have on your hands? Can you even count them? Zayn was taken away by the police. Lyra stayed in the ward, attempting a final struggle. You knew all along. She looked at Kalen's silence, then smiled, tears streaming down her face. You schemed against me. We were married for years, and you schemed against me, Kalen. After all your calculations, wasn't it all for Bashan? Wasn't it all to snatch Bashan away from the Chin family? I knew you were ambitious, that you wouldn't be content as a living son-in-law forever. Kalen was stunned. Even now, Lyra still believes that he did all this for Bashan. After the scandal of using substandard materials broke out, Bashan's bankruptcy would only be faster than in the previous life. Kalen wasn't doing it for Bashan. He just wanted those who wronged him to pay the price. I know you hate me, resent me, but Zayn could never do such a thing. He wasn't with me for money. After Zayn was taken away, Lyra seemed to have lost her anchor, and she started talking nonsense. From her ramblings, Kalen pieced together the complete picture of the previous life. She and Zayn eloped and were surrounded by a convoy of victims. In the end, they were rammed off of a viaduct by the victims, their bodies shattered. Was it her? I knew it. You must have been instigated by someone to do such a thing. Lyra's eyes were bloodshot, and she pointed the finger at Suri, who was standing nearby. Kalen blocked Lyra, who was trying to rush over, and pulled out the information about the substandard materials and Zayn's gambling debts from Suri's bag. This isn't the first time he's gambled. The hole got bigger and bigger, which is why he took the risk of buying substandard materials. Kalen glanced at the stunned Lyra and mocked. You trusted Zayn so much, and he fooled you twice. Lyra frantically flipped through the evidence. Her hand trembled as she picked up a photo of Zayn at a casino, tears falling from her eyes. Whether it was from hatred or regret, it didn't matter to Kalen anymore. He signaled Suri to stop the livestream. The matter was already trending on social media. Bashan Company suspected of using substandard construction materials. Bashan Company's vice president, surnamed Zayn, suspected of murder, has been arrested. Suri weeps, claiming her father's guilt has been avenged, and her great vengeance has been served. After Zayn's arrest, due to public pressure, he was directly sentenced to death. To Kalen's surprise, during this period, Lyra didn't call him once. Kalen thought, given her relationship with Zayn, she would at least plead for him once. Bashan Company's bidding was canceled, and they had to pay a huge penalty, causing their capital chain to break, directly following the same path as the previous life. On the other hand, Kalen was highly valued by Chinjin, and his rank rose rapidly. Suri, having avenged her father and served her great vengeance, continued to work in the influencer field, speaking out for the people. Chinjin established a branch in the province and asked if Kalen was willing to serve as the general manager. Kalen readily agreed. This city held too many memories, good and bad, all intertwined. Kalen wants to get out of this quagmire. Before leaving, Kalen wanted to see Zayn. He had lost a lot of weight, and his cheeks were sunken to a frightening degree. When Kalen saw him, he was already half mad. He could only mutter, if only I'd come back a little earlier, a little earlier. The prison guard said he suddenly became like this and told Kalen to leave early. After seeing him, as soon as Kalen sat down, he seemed to wake up from a dream. Kalen, help me. I'm back from the future. I know a lot about what will happen. I came back too late. If only I was a little earlier, I could have. He gritted his teeth, his face full of unwillingness, but not a trace of remorse. Kalen was a little surprised. Zayn was also reborn, just a step behind them. However, it was just a surprise. In both lives, he was a complete villain. Being reborn was just heaven's punishment for him. Before Kalen could ask further, Lyra relented and signed a divorce agreement with him. Bashan is now in ruins, and there's no point for her to drag things out any longer. His last meeting with her was at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Lyra was dressed in a wedding gown, holding a bouquet of flowers. Is there really no chance for us to reconcile? We've both been reborn. Shouldn't we give each other another chance? Tears streamed down her face like a beaded curtain, her beautiful face filled with remorse. Let me marry you again, okay? Kalen shook his head silently. Liam, who was standing nearby, exchanged a glance with Lyra and hurriedly knelt before Kalen. Dad, we really know we were wrong. He eagerly tried to kowtow to Kalen, but Kalen stopped him. Kalen just found it ridiculous. In order not to divorce Kalen, Lyra actually used Liam as a bargaining chip. What's even more ridiculous is that Liam was never his child. The moment Kalen received the divorce certificate, the spikes that had been erected all over his body gradually dissipated. Stepping out of the Civil Affairs Bureau, the sunlight was blinding. Kalen felt like he was reborn. For the rest of his life, he will no longer live for the Chin family, but for Kalen.